2, maybe 3 years, really 2 years, to be honest with you. If you can't get out of the second round, they should look to possibly draft another quarterback.
Ooh, all right. Now, in fairness, Wentz, as McNabb said, he hasn't been healthy 100%. But then again, it's Donovan talking. Now, it's not like Wentz has failed in the playoffs, but in the bigger scheme of things, what did you think of what Donovan had to say?
Well, look, it's not what he said, it's the messenger.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this is Donovan McNabb. Look, what he said wasn't that terrible, and if some national analyst had said it, we're not even paying attention to that right now, but it's Donovan McNabb. And look, Five, you gotta have more self-awareness than this. You gotta know that whatever you say about Carson Wentz is gonna be blown up. There's this perception, fair or not, about Donovan that he's got thin skin, that he's never gotten over the way he was treated here, and that he doesn't appreciate how welcoming this town has been to his successor, eventual successor, and Carson Wentz, the next franchise quarterback. And I don't know how fair all that is. I think there's probably a shred of truth to it. But if you're Five, you got to know that, right? I mean, you have to at least... the lack of self-awareness has been there for his entire career, for the decade he played here, and it looks like it hasn't gone away.
He doesn't care. See, that's the thing. He fully understands that no matter what comes out of his mouth in Philadelphia is going to be perceived a different way. I had a chance to talk to him earlier today, and one of the first things he told me was, he says, tell me where I'm wrong. He said, I didn't say anything negative about Carson Wentz. I said, if he doesn't show the durability in the next couple of years, the Eagles could be looking elsewhere for a quarterback. He said, you look at what Nick Foles has on tape. Nick Foles has 4 playoff wins, including a Super Bowl trophy. Carson Wentz has 0 playoff appearances. He said, you know how fickle the fan base can be here in Philadelphia. And there's a lot of truth, to what he says. But just because he said it, it becomes even more magnified.
Oh, yeah.
And, Donovan does have thin skin. Donovan took a lot of things personal in a lot of ways that were said about him during his time here in Philadelphia. But you're right, I couldn't agree with you more. Donovan is a very intelligent individual. He should be smart enough to know to say something a certain way so that it doesn't offend a mass audience, in this case, the Philadelphia fan base, and of course, Carson Wentz's teammates as well.
Yeah, well, the one thing he did say that was a little confusing to me,
right.
He said Carson needs to get out of the second round, but then he said it was all about his durability. Well, what if the interim happens there? What if Carson's healthy and he plays well and they lose in the divisional round both games? Well, what happens then? To me, and look, they're going to re-sign Carson Wentz as long as he stays on the field.
Right.
I think it's going to be a moot point at that point. But you're right. It's just about Donovan being the guy who said it.
Well, all right, let me ask you this then. Let's say Carson gets to the playoffs a couple times over the next 3 years, doesn't get past the second round. What's this fan base going to say then?
Yeah, maybe there's going to be impatience.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, especially coming after Nick Foles. And Donovan knows about the criticism more than anybody.
Yep.
But because of that, he should also know, maybe you don't say that.
He don't care. The dude doesn't care, man. It's funny that he knows. He's like a walking target no matter what he says or does in his
It's like he's embracing it right now.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Well, one guy who certainly didn't like those comments was Lane Johnson. It didn't go over well with him. Here's a look at what Lane tweeted last night. He says to McNabb with the snake emojis, and you wonder why nobody respects you when you come back. And he wasn't done, of course, because this is Lane. Today he tweets, that's my quarterback, and he tags Carson Wentz on that. We know this group of players, they defend each other.
Yep.
So what did you think about what Lane had to say?
Not surprised one bit. I love Lane Johnson, man. I tell you what, he's one of the few colorful players in that locker room, and he's going to tell you exactly how he feels no matter what. Basically, his message is this: don't mess with one of my teammates. More importantly, you don't mess with my quarterback and think you're going to get away with it. Lane told me last night, he says, this is BS. He says, all these players want the worst for current players. So they look better, but they want to shake your hand in training camp. Wow. Now, here's basically what Lane is saying. You know what? Former players, you've had your day in the sun. Now it's our time to shine. Embrace us, support us, or basically just stay away altogether. Don't just try to interfere with what we're trying to accomplish here. And I get that. Lane wears his emotions on his shoulder, and that's understandable. And I get that. But that just goes to show you what those guys in the locker room think about Carson Wentz, and no matter what is said, they are going to defend him, no question about it.
And it's kind of funny because I go back to the Philly Voice story and how big of a deal that was. It was funny because at that moment, it was kind of galvanizing, not just for the players in that locker room, but for the fan base too, because at that time, everyone was on this Nick Foles bandwagon, and then there was a reason to rally around Carson Wentz, and I kind of think that's what's kind of happening here now with him. It's interesting because if Donovan was an analyst still for a network like he was, to me that's less of a big deal because then that's his job. When he spoke this weekend, he wasn't speaking as an analyst. He's speaking as a former football player. He's speaking as a former Philadelphia Eagle. It wasn't his job. So to me, that makes a difference too.
Well, it doesn't stop there because earlier today, Donovan took to Twitter to clarify some of his comments. Now, he said this: for those of you who misread, didn't understand, were confused, or just didn't like my comments, let me clarify it for you. Let me start by saying there's no beef, riff, or ill will towards Carson Wentz or the Eagles. My comments were strictly based off experience and understanding of how the business of football works. You are consistently evaluated every day, every game, and if you are reliable and are healthy enough to play. I know at times as players and fans can be confusing to move on from a beloved player, but due to the business of health and trust, tough decisions are usually made. Maybe people just didn't like it because it's coming from me, or I answered a question from one of the talents on the radio the way you didn't agree with it. If that's how you feel, I'm sorry you feel that way. It's the nature of the game. Now, Dave, this is Donovan talking, so people likely won't change their opinion, but does the explanation in any way add merit to what he originally said?
No.
No?
I mean, we know what he was saying.
Right.
And it doesn't. The one thing he did mention was that it maybe it's because it comes from him. Like, ding, ding, ding. Of course, that's the lack of self-awareness we were talking about. And it's one of two things. It's lack of self-awareness, or it's like you said, he doesn't care. And either way, it's a shame to me. It's a shame if he doesn't care, because I wish we could get to a point in this city where we could just like Donovan and respect him for what he did and treat him as an all-time great player, because that's what he was. An all-time great player. To me, he's the best quarterback in franchise history. But there's just this bad blood now that's now recirculated, and it's with the current team, so it's hard to get over that, especially when Lane Johnson's a Super Bowl winner. I mean, he's a part of the team that brought a Super Bowl here, and now you have look, it's fun for us to throw back and forth, but overall, like, I kind of wish we could get to a point where we didn't have this, and Donovan was just heralded as a great player, and he would keep his mouth shut. It's not going to happen.
Not going to happen. Okay, so the social media comments that I had a chance to see earlier today, you see a lot of people saying that, oh, Donovan's backtracking now, trying to talk his way out of this. The comments that he made later in the day in terms of trying to clarify what he said should have been part of his comments that he made initially on Saturday in terms of breaking it down more thoroughly. I mean, it wasn't like he was under a time restraint, so he could have clarified himself in that regard. So it does look like he's backtracking now. The information he gave out today explains a lot in terms of what he was thinking, but it doesn't excuse the fact that basically it looks like he's attacking a quarterback, that he's jealous of the current successful situation that Carson Wentz and the Eagles organization is in right now, on the heels of a Super Bowl win in 2017. So no matter what he says, what he does, Donovan is not going to be heard. And I think it's going to be a while before you see Donovan back in the Philadelphia area.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. Well, speaking of bad blood, there's DeSean Jackson. It's no mystery he was not a fan of Chip Kelly and how things ended here in Philadelphia the first time. He's not over it, Gunner. He's still talking about it. Take a look over the weekend at an autograph signing with Mike Vick,
great.
I believe. No Chip Kellys allowed here. Kelly, of course, released DeSean in 2014. The Eagles brought him back this March. So, Gunner, when you see that, is this DeSean having some fun? Or is he still a little hurt by the way things went down the first time?
It's a combination of the two. He fully knows Chip Kelly is out beating the pavement, trying to get recruits to kind of save what was a disastrous initial season for him at UCLA, going 3-9. But there's a lot of bitterness on DeSean Jackson's part, because in DeSean Jackson's mind, basically Chip Kelly broke up the band, so to speak, with LaShawn McCoy, Selleck, a younger Zach Ertz, so on and so forth. They thought they were building something
Mike Vick
special.
at that point,
Mike Vick was the quarterback then, so they thought they were were building something special, and then all of a sudden he was singled out as a problem with the organization. And there's a part of him that believes Chip Kelly has something to do with the rumor that got out there that Deshaun has allegedly so-called had gang affiliations. So he's never let that get out of the back of his mind. I don't think you'll be seeing Deshaun Jackson and Chip Kelly breaking bread anytime soon, and understandably why.
What's more likely, McNabb coming back and getting honored and maybe like hanging out with Lane Johnson, or Deshaun breaking bread with Chip Kelly?
Neither.
If you had to pick one, that's more like...
I would have to say McNabb coming back and mending fences with Lane Johnson. I don't think Deshaun Jackson wants anything to do with Chip Kelly.
I think with Deshaun, it's like one of those situations where you joke about it, but you're dead serious, right?
Yeah.
He's making a joke about it, but he hates Chip Kelly.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty clear. He doesn't care for that man.
Not only him, but Sean McCoy.
All those guys
has
really
openly professed his dislike for Chip Kelly. Mike Vick talk about how Chip Kelly brought him to tears when Chip Kelly wouldn't basically tell him who the starting quarterback was that one season, and Mike Vick felt he had clearly outplayed the competition in training camp.
Nick Foles at the time.
Nick Foles should have been the starting quarterback. So there's a lot of bad blood between Chip Kelly and some former Philadelphia Eagles.
At least we can break bread, right?
No. This week, we've got the NFL Draft covered from every angle in Draft Central. I'll be joined by Barrett Brooks and Ray Dinger. I'll go one-on-one with Eagles head coach Doug Peterson. Our coverage begins Thursday at 6 p.m. Time now for our draft profile. We focus on a playmaking safety from Florida. Chauncey Gardner Johnson ran a 4.48 40 in the dash at the combine, and he did it all on the field for the Gators. Last year, 9 tackles for a loss, 3 sacks, 4 interceptions, and he is a big game player. He was named Bowl MVP twice in his 3 years in Gainesville, including last season when the Gators throttled Michigan in the Peach Bowl. Barrett Brooks breaks him down for us.
Yo, I love this kid. He's a safety from Florida. I tell you what, Chauncey's one of those players that gets me really excited because you can play him anywhere. Although he plays safety, he can play in the slot. He ran a 4.4, so he can go out there and cover receivers. He can also play that center field, go up and make plays out there and knock players away from the ball. He does it all. You can blitz him off the corner. And when I broke down the film, he got me excited because he played everywhere, and he made sure that he made his presence known when you played against him. So watch this when I break down the film. This is just a simple blitz. But he doesn't just go and have his eyes closed and go to the quarterback. He sees his run, goes and makes the play, stop Georgia's running back from going in. Then look at his recognition. They got a bunch outside, a bunch formation. He reads the bunch, sees it's a speed screen, and look how aggressive he goes and takes on the blocker. Has his outside and goes and makes the play. That's intensity right there. Understanding what he needs to understand to get out there and make a play. This round, he turns around, he's blitzing from way outside. He just goes and makes the sack. You want a DB to go up there and make an impact sack. That's exactly what he did. Gave his defense a chance to go out there and make him punt. And then, if all else fails, Chauncey's one of those guys that can guess. He guessed right on it. He's quick enough and fast enough to go make a play. Watch this interception. Reads the quarterback, sees the route, and jumps the route, and boom, takes it for 6. Chauncey Johnson can go out there and be a definite impact player here for the Philadelphia Eagles. If they took a chance on him in the first round, I wouldn't be mad. We got some older safeties there. They're still good, but he can still come in and play in that slot position and play a safety. We play big nickel all the time. When I say big nickel, that's 2 linebackers and 3 safeties. He could be that third safety for the Philadelphia Eagles. I like this kid. Chauncey can play.
All right, B. Brooks, safety. Interesting idea, Dave. Now, you know what, the Eagles already have a safety. They've also had a few injuries as well. Would you be surprised if they were looking at a safety in that first round?
No, I mean, I think the second round probably makes a little more sense for the value. But no, they really should think about a safety. You have Malcolm Jenkins, not getting any younger. Rodney McLeod tore his ACL. He's coming back, but really for 1 year. After that, Trey Sullivan, Andrew Sendejo, those aren't guys that are going to prevent you from drafting one. Barrett's right. I mean, you can draft a safety this week, and then he can be your third safety. He can play quite a bit as a rookie, and then he's a starter in 2020. It makes plenty of sense to me.
You have a little youth back there, too, because Avonte Maddox really did shine back there as a safety as well. You're right. You have some older guys, but I don't see safety as a top priority right now with this team. I'm not saying they don't need to add a young safety, but I'm just saying I don't see that as that high of a priority at this particular point when they can use that depth along that defensive line.
Well, I mean, that's why I would still lean toward line for that first pick.
Yeah.
But you have 2 second-round picks, and I think that's going to be a sweet spot for some of these really good safeties. Maybe not Chauncey here, but maybe Savage from Maryland
Okay.
or Thornhill from Virginia. One of those guys might be there at 53 or 57, and that's kind of where I think would be a good spot to pick one of them up.
All right. We're going to step aside one final time in the show. When we come back, we are talking draft props with Brent Feinberg. The Daily Line is next. Back with the Daily Line presented by William Hill. We welcome in now Brent Feinberg, and we're going to discuss some of the draft day props. And of course, let's talk about the offensive lineman and the odds. Who's going to be the first O lineman off the board?
Well, again, I think right now, if you look at the odds right now, I think Jawan Taylor, minus 145. Listen, Derek, a lot of times there's not much value in taking a favorite. However, when there's less information out there, guys, like the NFL draft, it's not like an NFL game where there's a ton of information. It's more speculation, more guesswork. Sometimes you can find more value in taking a favorite. I think that's the case here with Jawan Taylor. All the research I have done, about 85% of the top-ranked talent evaluators have Jawan Taylor ranked as the number one offensive lineman. Plus, it's a tackle, guys, which teams tend to look more at tackles than guards. If you're looking for a long shot, Chris Lindstrom at 40-1, I think could be the first guard coming off the board. I'm not expecting it, but I think Jawan Taylor minus 145 has some value.
How about tight ends, bro? This is a pretty good class up.
Yeah, well, it's funny. This is kind of a little bit like Philadelphia having Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. There's two great tight ends in Iowa right now, and T.J. Hawkinson and Noah Fant. Now, again, T.J. Hawkinson, guys, he's been getting comparisons to Rob Gronkowski. He could be an incredible potential game-changing tight end. I have not seen one piece of information from anything I've read, and I've read hundreds of top evaluators talking about these guys. I have not seen one person say that they prefer Noah Fant to T.J. Hawkinson. I think T.J. Hawkinson minus 300, you have to think there's at least a 75% chance, Dave, for it to be a good value to take him. I think the chances are at least 85%. Wow. I think minus 300 still has value.
It's so tough because one team can just ruin it all.
It can ruin it, but I still think there's value. Again, if there's value, and I think the odds are above 75%, I still think there's value in taking Hawkinson. I really do. When
you look at some of the props in the past, what's one that kind of stands out to you?
Well, this was not a good story. This was one of I still remember it was yesterday. It was 2014, and my biggest draft day prop bet was who would be drafted first, Eric Ebron or Odell Beckham.
Wow.
And every single thing I had read was that Odell Beckham was going to be drafted probably about 3-4 spots ahead of Eric Ebron. Of course, 10th pick, 2014 draft, the Detroit Lions select Eric Ebron. My head slumped. I'm like, oh, and then Beckham went 2 picks later. In hindsight, you can argue I was right.
You were right.
But I got negative cash.
That doesn't help you any,
Yeah, it doesn't help.
But you're so good at what you do, that's just a rarity, right?
You know, Tom Hanks said there's no crying in baseball. There's no crying in the NFL draft, right?
Wow.
In their draft prop bench. If you lose, you lose. But
I would have cried.
I got to let the bookies win sometimes, guys. I got to let them win every now and then.
All right, Brent, as always, man, thank you for the insight, man. Of course, we look forward to talking to you each and every week.
Absolutely, I appreciate it.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Quick Slants presented by Nissan. For Brent Feinberg and Dave Zangaro, I'm Derrick Gunn. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you right back here tomorrow with another edition of Quick Slants presented by Nissan. So long, everybody.